The apartment above mine doesn't exist. The footsteps above. There are sounds your brain is trained to ignore. The hum of a refrigerator, the creak of old pipes, the wind pressing against a window at night. But there is one sound your mind can never ignore. Footsteps. Especially when they come from a place where no one should exist. Ethan Brooks had lived in apartment 3B for exactly 12 days when he heard them for the first time. It was 2:13 in the morning. He knew the exact time because the digital clock beside his bed flashed bright red through the darkness. 2:13 a.m. He had been awake for hours. Moving into Blackwood Apartments was supposed to be a fresh start. 6 months earlier, Ethan had walked away from a job he hated, a relationship that had quietly fallen apart, and a city that no longer felt like home. He packed everything he owned into the back of an aging pickup truck and drove until he found somewhere unfamiliar. Blackwood wasn't impressive. One grocery store, one gas station, a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. It was exactly what he wanted. Quiet, forgettable. The apartment building itself was older than anything else in town. Red brick, narrow windows, 3 stories tall. Paint peeled from the railings, and the hallway lights buzzed every few seconds like tired insects. The rent was cheap, too cheap, but Ethan didn't ask questions. He just wanted somewhere to sleep. For nearly 2 weeks, nothing happened, until the footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy, slow, deliberate, directly above his bed. Ethan opened his eyes. At first, he smiled. "Great," he muttered. "Someone upstairs likes midnight walks." He rolled over and pulled the blanket over his shoulder. The footsteps stopped. Silence. He closed his eyes again. Then, thump. This one was louder, close enough that dust drifted from the ceiling. Ethan sat upright. His apartment was on the 3rd floor, the top floor. There wasn't supposed to be anyone above him. He frowned. Maybe he was dreaming. Maybe the sound echoed through the building. Old places made strange noises. That had to be it. He lay back down. Nothing. Minutes passed. Finally, exhaustion won. He fell asleep. The next morning, sunlight erased most of the fear. Everything seemed ridiculous in daylight. While carrying a trash bag downstairs, Ethan spotted his landlord sweeping leaves from the front steps. Frank Delaney looked about 70. Gray beard, baseball cap, permanent coffee stain on his flannel shirt. He smiled when he saw Ethan. "Sleeping all right?" Ethan laughed. "Mostly." Frank leaned on the broom. "Mostly? I heard somebody walking around upstairs around 2. Frank stopped smiling, only for a second. Then he chuckled. "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because you're on the top floor." "I know." "So who's upstairs?" Frank shrugged. "Nobody." "Seriously?" "I'm serious." "You don't have an attic?" "No." "Roof access?" "Nope." Ethan looked up. 3 floors, exactly like he'd counted before. Frank smiled again. "Old buildings make old noises." Then he picked up the broom and changed the subject. "Let me know if your sink starts leaking." The conversation ended there, but something about Frank's expression stayed with Ethan all day. It wasn't fear, it was recognition, as if he'd answered that question before, many times. That night, Ethan stayed awake. He made coffee, watched television, played games on his phone. Midnight came. Nothing. 1 o'clock. Nothing. He began to feel embarrassed. Maybe he really had imagined it. By 2, he was ready for bed. Then, the clock changed. 2:13 a.m. Immediately, Thump, thump, thump. Exactly 3 footsteps. Then, silence. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and hurried into the hallway. The corridor was empty. He listened. Nothing. He climbed the stairwell toward the roof access door. Locked. A heavy chain wrapped around the handle. Dust covered the floor. No footprints. No signs anyone had been there in months. He stood perfectly still. The building was silent. Then, behind him, 3 slow footsteps. Inside his apartment. Ethan spun around. The hallway was empty. His apartment door remained closed. He hurried back downstairs and unlocked it. Everything looked normal. Nothing had moved. Nothing had been stolen. Yet the air felt different. Warmer. Almost occupied. He searched every room, closets, bathroom, kitchen, under the bed. Nothing. When he finally sat on the couch, he laughed nervously. "I'm losing it." The apartment answered with a soft creak from somewhere above. Over the next week, the footsteps became routine. Always at 2:13. Always exactly 3. Never more. Never less. Ethan started recording them. His phone captured nothing. Complete silence. Yet every time he listened live, he heard them clearly. He even called his brother one night. "Just stay on the phone." "What am I listening for?" "You'll know." 2:13 arrived. The footsteps echoed through the ceiling. "Loud enough?" Ethan whispered. "What footsteps? You seriously can't hear that?" "Hear what?" Ethan slowly lowered the phone. His brother sounded genuinely confused. The line went quiet. Finally, he laughed. "Dude, you need more sleep." Sleep became impossible. Dark circles formed beneath Ethan's eyes. Coffee stopped helping. His coworkers at the hardware store asked if he was sick. He blamed stress. The truth sounded insane. The apartment above mine doesn't exist, but someone keeps walking around inside it. Nobody would believe that, not even him. Until Thursday afternoon. A package was delivered to the wrong apartment. Apartment 2B. The elderly woman living there invited Ethan inside while she searched for it. Her apartment was directly beneath his. While she looked through boxes, Ethan noticed something strange. The layout. Every room matched his apartment exactly. Same hallway, same windows, same bathroom location. Everything. When he mentioned it, the woman smiled. That's how these old buildings were built. Stacked like blocks. Every apartment sits directly above another. Ethan froze. Directly above? Of course. So, he hesitated. Nothing's above mine? The woman looked confused. No. Never has been. Then why is my ceiling higher than yours? She blinked. What do you mean? He pointed upward. My living room ceiling is almost a foot taller. She laughed. No, it isn't. It is. It can't be. Ethan measured it that evening. 9-foot ceilings. He borrowed a tape measure from another tenant downstairs. 8 feet. Exactly. 1 foot missing. Somewhere. That night, 2:13, the footsteps returned. Only this time, they didn't stop after 3. They continued, slowly crossing the ceiling, back and forth, back and forth, like someone was pacing, listening, waiting. Ethan stood beneath the sound, unable to breathe. Then something happened that made every logical explanation disappear forever. A fine layer of white dust drifted onto the floor. Mixed into the dust was something else. A tiny flake of faded blue paint. paint that matched no wall in Ethan's apartment. He picked it up with trembling fingers. There was only one place it could have fallen from: the floor of the apartment above him. Except that apartment didn't exist. The tiny chip of faded blue paint rested in Ethan's palm. It couldn't be there. He turned it over between his fingers, studying every crack in its surface. It was old, dry. The color had faded from decades of age. His apartment wasn't painted blue. Neither was the hallway. Neither was the apartment below. So where had it come from? The footsteps stopped. Silence settled over the room again. Ethan looked toward the ceiling. For the first time since moving into Blackwood Apartments, he wasn't just scared. He was curious. The next morning, he called in sick. He wasn't about to spend another day pretending everything was normal. Instead, he drove to the Blackwood Public Library. It was the kind of place that still smelled like old paper and dust. Behind the front desk sat an elderly librarian with silver glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for building records." "What building?" "Blackwood Apartments." She smiled politely. "Old Town records are downstairs. Help yourself." The basement archive hadn't changed in decades. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls. Cardboard boxes overflowed with maps, permits, newspaper clippings, and faded photographs. After nearly an hour of searching, Ethan found what he wanted: a thick folder labeled Blackwood Apartments, constructed 1958. Inside were the original blueprints. He carefully unfolded the brittle pages across a large wooden table. His eyes scanned every room: Apartment 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B. Exactly what he expected. Then he noticed something strange. Near the center of the page, where the stairwell should have ended, someone had drawn another staircase. It wasn't part of the blueprint. It had been added later with blue ink. The staircase climbed above the third floor, toward a room labeled with only one handwritten word: sealed. There were no dimensions, no apartment number, no explanation, just sealed. Ethan stared at it for nearly a minute. A voice suddenly interrupted him. "Interesting place to spend your morning." He jumped. The librarian stood behind him. She wasn't smiling anymore. "You found the old plans." "I have a question." "I'm sure you do." He pointed to the mysterious staircase. "What's this?" The woman looked down. For a brief moment, something flashed across her face. Recognition, then concern. "I've never seen that before." She folded the blueprint closed, a little too quickly. "I think you're finished here." "What?" "The archive closes in 5 minutes." "It's 11 in the morning." "I know." She gently slid the folder out of his hands. "I think it's time for you to go." Outside, Ethan sat in his truck. The conversation replayed in his mind. She'd lied. She recognized the drawing. He was certain of it. As he started the engine, movement caught his eye. Across the street stood an old man walking a golden retriever. The man wasn't looking at traffic. He wasn't looking at the library. He was staring directly at Ethan. When their eyes met, the man slowly pointed toward Blackwood Apartments, then shook his head once, before continuing down the sidewalk. That evening, Ethan returned home carrying groceries. Apartment 3A's door was open. His neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, was watering several plants in the hallway. She had lived there for nearly 20 years. If anyone knew the building, it was her. "Can I ask you something?" She smiled. "Of course." "Has there ever been another floor above ours?" Her watering can stopped moving. "What?" Another apartment? No. An attic? No. A hidden room? Her smile faded. Why are you asking? I hear footsteps. Mrs. Holloway didn't answer. Instead, she quietly walked into her apartment. Before closing the door, she whispered something so softly, Ethan almost missed it. It heard you. Click. The door locked. That night, Ethan couldn't concentrate. He left every light in the apartment on. The television played quietly in the background. He kept checking the clock. 2:09, 2:10, 2:11. His heartbeat quickened. 2:12. He stood beneath the center of the living room, watching the ceiling. The clock changed. 2:13 a.m. Nothing. 30 seconds passed. Still nothing. Ethan exhaled. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been happening had finally... Thump! The sound exploded through the ceiling. This time, it wasn't 3 footsteps. It was dozens. Heavy footsteps. Running. Someone, or something, was sprinting back and forth directly overhead. Furniture scraped across the floor. Something massive slammed into a wall. A low rumble vibrated through the entire apartment. The ceiling lights swung back and forth. Dust poured down like gray snow. "What are you doing?" Ethan shouted. The running stopped instantly. Complete silence. His own breathing echoed through the apartment. Then, a single knock. 3 slow taps, directly above him. Knock. 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 Ethan's blood ran cold. It had answered him. The following afternoon, he bought a small inspection camera from the hardware store. The flexible camera was designed to snake through walls and ceilings. If there was any space above him, he'd finally see it. Standing on a ladder, Ethan carefully removed the cover from a ceiling light fixture. A dark opening appeared above the drywall. He fed the tiny camera upward. 5 inches. 10. 1 foot. The screen remained black. 2 feet. Still nothing. Then, the camera emerged into an empty space. His breath caught. There was a room above him. Not insulation, not wooden beams. An actual room. The camera light revealed an old hardwood floor. Blue paint peeled from the walls. Broken furniture lay scattered everywhere. Dust floated through the beam of light. It looked abandoned, untouched for decades. His hands trembled. I'm not crazy. He slowly rotated the camera. Near the far wall stood an old wooden rocking chair. It wasn't moving. Nothing else did either. He leaned closer to the monitor. Then the chair rocked. Once. Forward, back. Forward, back. Nobody touched it. Ethan froze. The chair continued rocking. Slowly. Deliberately. Then, a pair of pale feet stepped into view behind it. Bare. Dirty. Perfectly still. The camera couldn't see the rest of the figure. Only the feet. Seconds passed. Neither of them moved. Then the monitor filled with static. The screen went black. The cables suddenly jerked upward with incredible force. Before Ethan could react, something yanked the camera completely out of his hands. The cable disappeared into the darkness above. He lunged for it. Too late. The line snapped tight. One violent pull. Then silence. His brand new inspection camera was gone, swallowed by the space above his apartment. Ethan stood frozen on the ladder, staring into the hole in his ceiling. A moment later, something drifted down from the darkness. Not dust, not paint. A small, folded piece of yellowed paper. His hands shook as he unfolded it. Written in faded black ink were 6 words. "You should have left yesterday." Ethan read the note again. "You should have left yesterday." The paper felt brittle in his hands, as though it had been written decades ago. He checked the handwriting. Sharp, deliberate. Someone had taken their time. Someone who knew his name. Someone who had been inside the room above him. He looked up at the hole in his ceiling. It was dark again, silent, as if nothing had ever been there. But his inspection camera was gone. Something had taken it, and something had left him a warning. Ethan didn't sleep. At sunrise, he climbed into his truck and drove straight back to the library. The same librarian looked up as he entered. This time, she sighed before he even reached the desk. "I was hoping you wouldn't come back. I found a room above my apartment." She stared at him. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, she quietly locked the front doors. The library wasn't due to open for another 20 minutes. She flipped the sign to closed. "Follow me." Instead of leading Ethan downstairs to the archives, she unlocked a narrow office hidden behind the circulation desk. Dust coated everything inside. On the shelves sat dozens of old newspaper binders. She pulled one free, then another, then another. She stacked them on the desk. "What you're looking for was never officially investigated." She opened the first binder. A yellowed newspaper clipping had been carefully preserved beneath plastic. The headline read, "Local man disappears from Blackwood Apartments." The date was June 14th, 1962. Ethan scanned the article. Police believe 32-year-old Harold Mason voluntarily left the area after neighbors reported unusual behavior in the days before his disappearance. "He kept insisting someone was walking around the apartment above him," one neighbor reported. Ethan slowly looked up. The librarian slid another article toward him. 1974. Another disappearance. Same apartment. Apartment 3B. Different tenant. Same story. Footsteps. Another clipping. 1989. Apartment 3B. Footsteps. Gone. 1998. Gone. 2007. Gone. 2018. Gone. Every tenant had vanished. Every one of them lived in Ethan's apartment. Every one reported hearing footsteps above them. Every investigation ended the same way. Missing. Never found. "Why didn't anyone tear the building down?" Ethan whispered. "They tried." The librarian's voice was barely audible. "It burned." "What?" 3 different owners tried to demolish it. "What happened?" "The equipment stopped working. The crews quit. The 4th owner succeeded." Ethan leaned forward. "They demolished the entire building." His eyes widened. "What happened next?" She swallowed. 3 months later, the building was standing again. Ethan laughed, not because it was funny, because it was impossible. "That's insane." "I know." "No. That's literally impossible." "I know. There has to be another explanation." The librarian looked directly into his eyes. "I've lived in Blackwood my entire life. My father warned me never to go near that building after dark. My grandfather told him the same thing. Some places She hesitated. Refused to leave. Before Ethan could ask another question, the front door rattled violently. Someone was trying to get inside. The librarian looked toward the entrance. Her face turned pale. "You need to go." "What?" "Now." She hurried him toward the back exit. "Wait, who was that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a folded map into his hand. "Don't come back here." The back door slammed shut behind him. By the time Ethan reached the alley, the front entrance was open. Frank, the landlord. He stepped into the library carrying a paper bag. He wasn't smiling. That evening, Ethan knocked on Frank's apartment door. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. As he turned to leave, the door slowly creaked open. Frank stood inside. His shoulders looked heavier than before. "You shouldn't have gone digging." "You knew." Frank didn't deny it. "You knew all along." "I hoped it wouldn't notice you." "What noticed me?" Frank looked toward the ceiling. "It." Silence. Ethan stepped inside. "I need answers." Frank poured 2 cups of coffee. Neither of them drank. Finally, the old man spoke. "When I bought this building, the previous owner gave me one rule." He looked at Ethan. "If anyone in 3B starts hearing footsteps, don't let them stay." "Why?" "Because it always starts with footsteps." "What starts?" "The choosing." Ethan frowned. "The apartment doesn't take everyone. It chooses. It waits. Sometimes years. Sometimes decades. But once it decides," Frank's voice broke, "it never lets go." Frank walked into a back bedroom. When he returned, he carried a faded photograph. It showed a smiling young man standing in front of Blackwood Apartments. "He was my brother." The date on the back read, April 3rd, 1989. He lived in 3B. Ethan stared at the picture. What happened? He heard footsteps. Frank swallowed hard. And one day, he disappeared. The police blamed drugs. Our parents blamed themselves. Frank looked toward the window. I blamed the apartment. Why not leave? Frank gave a tired smile. You think I stayed because I wanted to? I stayed because someone has to warn people. And because, his voice grew quieter, if nobody owns the building, it finds another way. Ethan unfolded the map the librarian had given him. It was an old maintenance diagram. Most of it made sense. Boiler room, electrical room, storage. But one hallway had been circled in red. Beside it, someone had written 2 words. Don't open. An hour later, Ethan stood in the basement. The air smelled damp. Old pipes rattled overhead. The maintenance hallway ended at a concrete wall, exactly where the map said it would. Except, the wall sounded hollow. He knocked again. Definitely hollow. He searched the edges until his fingers brushed cold metal. A hidden latch. With a loud click, part of the wall swung inward. Behind it, a staircase. Narrow, wooden, covered in dust. It climbed into complete darkness. Ethan switched on his flashlight. The beam disappeared upward. He took the first step. The wood groaned beneath his weight. Second step. Third. The air became colder, much colder. The staircase should have reached the roof within 20 feet. Instead, it kept climbing. 30 feet. 40, 50. His flashlight flickered. The walls no longer looked like brick. They looked older. Rotting wallpaper peeled away in long strips. Family photographs hung crooked along the staircase. Ethan stopped. The faces in every picture had been scratched away, except one. At the very end of the hall was a photograph in a cracked frame. He lifted it from the wall. His heart stopped. It was him. Not someone who looked like him. Him. Standing outside Blackwood Apartments, wearing the same jacket he owned now. The photograph was yellow with age. The date stamped across the bottom read, October 12th, 1989. 37 years ago. More than a decade before Ethan was born. His hand shook so violently the frame slipped from his fingers. Glass shattered across the steps. The sound echoed upward. Then, silence. A cold breeze drifted down the staircase, followed by something else. A single, slow footstep. Thump. Ethan froze. Another. Thump. His flashlight beam climbed the remaining stairs. At the top stood an old blue door, slightly open. The same faded blue paint that had fallen into his apartment flaked from its surface. Beyond the narrow opening was complete darkness. Then, two faint lights appeared inside. Eyes, watching him, unblinking. The figure stepped forward just enough for Ethan to see its outline. Tall, unnaturally thin. Its body was little more than a silhouette. Only the eyes glowed, soft, white, patient. It didn't rush toward him. It didn't make a sound. It simply tilted its head and spoke in Ethan's own voice. I've been waiting. The blue door slowly swung open on its own. Beyond it was another apartment. At first glance, it looked exactly like Ethan's. The same narrow hallway, the same kitchen, the same living room window, the same cracked bathroom mirror. But everything inside was older. Dust coated every surface. Wallpaper peeled from the walls. The furniture looked as if no one had touched it for decades. Yet someone had. Fresh footprints crossed the hardwood floor. Bare feet, leading deeper into the apartment. Then, disappearing. Ethan stood frozen at the doorway. Every instinct told him to run. Instead, he stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed through every room. Ethan spun around and grabbed the handle. Locked. He pulled harder. Nothing. There wasn't even a keyhole. His flashlight flickered once before going dark. Now the apartment was illuminated only by a pale gray light leaking through the windows. He walked toward them. Outside, Blackwood wasn't there. Instead, he saw endless darkness. No streets, no houses, no stars. Just an empty black void stretching forever. His reflection appeared in the glass. He stared at it. Then his reflection smiled. Ethan hadn't. He stumbled backward. The reflection remained at the window, watching him. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind him. He turned. No one. Another creak, this time from the bedroom. Slowly, Ethan moved toward the open door. Inside sat a wooden dresser, an old bed, a rocking chair. The same rocking chair he had seen through the inspection camera. It moved gently, forward, back, forward, back. No one was sitting in it. On the nightstand rested a stack of photographs. Ethan picked up the first. Harold Mason, the man who disappeared in 1962. The second, a young woman from 1974. The third, Frank's brother, 1989. Each photograph showed the same thing: a smiling tenant standing in front of apartment 3B. Each had another photograph underneath. The same person, standing inside the impossible apartment, looking frightened. Then another. The same person staring blankly into the camera. Then the final photograph. The apartment empty. The person gone. Ethan slowly reached the bottom of the stack. There were 4 empty spaces waiting. On top rested a brand new photograph. It had been taken only days earlier. It showed Ethan carrying moving boxes into Blackwood Apartments. Someone had been watching him before he ever moved in. "You finally understand." The voice came from the hallway, his own voice. Ethan looked up. The figure stood there, motionless. Its glowing eyes never blinked. It wasn't just wearing clothes like Ethan's. Its face was beginning to change. The outline of its jaw, its hair, its height. Every second it looked more human. Every second it looked more like him. "What are you?" The creature answered calmly. "I become what stays." The lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the apartment. Footsteps echoed around him. Not one set, dozens. Children, adults, old men, women, all walking at once. Whispers filled the darkness. "So tired. I just wanted somewhere quiet. Don't look at it. It's behind you." Ethan covered his ears. The whispers grew louder. Then they stopped. Complete silence. A hand touched his shoulder, ice cold. He spun around. Nothing. Then another hand, this time from the opposite side. Another. Another. Invisible fingers closed around his arms, his legs, his back, pulling him toward the hallway, toward the creature. Its glowing eyes were only a few feet away now. "You can stop fighting. You've already been here." The creature raised one pale hand. It pointed toward the cracked bathroom mirror. Ethan looked. His reflection wasn't there. Instead, the mirror showed another man, Harold Mason. Then the image shifted. The woman from 1974. Then Frank's brother. Then every missing tenant, one after another. Each reached toward the glass. Their mouths moved. No sound came out. Finally, the mirror showed Ethan. Not the Ethan standing in the room. Another Ethan. Older. Thin. Terrified. He pounded desperately against the inside of the mirror, trying to get out. Realization crashed over him. The apartment didn't kill people. It replaced them. The victims never left. They became trapped. The creatures simply walked back into the world wearing their faces. "No!" Ethan staggered backward. "No!" The creature smiled for the first time. Its face was now almost identical to his. "You understand. It always ends this way." Ethan's back struck the living room wall. His hand brushed something hanging beside the door. A fire alarm. Old. Rusted. Without thinking, he ripped it from the wall. The battery exploded in a shower of sparks. One spark landed on the brittle wallpaper. Flames raced across the dry walls instantly. The creature stopped smiling. For the first time, it stepped backward. The whispers became screams. Pictures fell from the walls. The apartment groaned like a living thing. The floor split beneath Ethan's feet. Smoke poured through every room. The creature lunged. Ethan dove for the front door. The lock vanished. He threw it open. He wasn't in the apartment anymore. He crashed into the maintenance hallway beneath Blackwood Apartments. Behind him, the blue door slammed shut. The staircase shook violently. The walls cracked. Timbers splintered overhead. Ethan sprinted downward. The impossible staircase seemed longer than before. Every few seconds, he heard another heavy footstep above him. Closer. Closer. Something was chasing him now. He never looked back. He burst through the hidden doorway into the basement just as the staircase collapsed behind him. The secret passage sealed itself. The wall became solid brick once more. There was no door, no latch, nothing. Only an ordinary wall. By sunrise, Blackwood Apartments was surrounded by firefighters. Smoke poured from the third floor. No one could explain where the fire had started. Frank stood beside Ethan. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Frank broke the silence. "It let you leave." Ethan looked at him. "I don't think it had a choice." Frank slowly shook his head. "It always has a choice." Ethan packed everything he owned before noon. He never even cleaned the apartment. He left the keys on the kitchen counter. By sunset, he was driving out of Blackwood. He never looked in the rearview mirror, not once. Months passed. Nightmares slowly faded. Life became normal again, or so he thought. One rainy evening, nearly a year later, Ethan stopped at a roadside gas station hundreds of miles away. As he paid for his coffee, the cashier smiled politely. "You're from Blackwood, aren't you?" Ethan's stomach tightened. "No." The cashier frowned. "That's strange. I could have sworn I saw you there yesterday." "I've never been back." The cashier shrugged. "Must have been someone who looked exactly like you." Ethan walked outside without another word. As he climbed into his truck, he glanced across the parking lot. A man stood beneath a flickering streetlight. Same height, same jacket, same face. His own face. The figure smiled. Its eyes glowed faintly white. Then a passing truck blocked Ethan's view. When it passed, the figure was gone. Blackwood Apartments still stands, 3 stories, exactly as it always has. The town insists there has never been a 4th floor. There has never been another apartment. There has never been anyone living above 3B. But if you ever find yourself renting the top floor apartment, and every night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., you hear 3 slow footsteps above your ceiling, don't investigate. Don't climb the stairs. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock. Because the apartment above you doesn't exist until it decides that it does.